All right, really quickly, I'm going to talk about ambient occlusion, how you can drop it in your scene to get a little extra shadows in your scene. So here's, if you just type in ambient occlusion into Google, this is what you get. And you can basically see what the idea is, what's happening in your software when you start using ambient occlusion. So right here, you can see what ambient occlusion does. It makes whatever light is shining on your scene, it will make it brighter. And anywhere light starts to not be directly, or on a surface not directly affected by light, a little bit darker. So think of it as light comes down, like in this classroom. Light comes down, hits the top of the tables, it receives the most light. But when light starts to bounce around and go underneath the desks, there's less light happening. And it tries to mimic that phenomenon, where there's an area, nooks and crannies receive less light. And that's what it's trying to do. It's like right in here, this is going to receive more light because it's more open to the world. Here, where the spaces get more tighter, these little corners in here, up in between, it gets darker. So down underneath the pole here, where this sphere meets the base of this pole, right in there, gets darker. As light gets, this little table's way back into all these other objects, it gets darker. Less light is traveling inside that. So it's basically a shader trick where it tries to mimic this phenomenon, what's happening. So this is what we use. What happens is, as two pieces of geometry get closer together, it calculates it darker. That's all it's doing. It's an extra calculation happening in the background. So we're faking this. So this is what it actually looks like if you were to put it onto a 3D character. So this is what it looks like when you render it, and then when you make an ambient occlusion map, it looks like this, and then it gets applied on top. So it really makes wrinkles, little corners and cracks pop out a whole lot more. And that's called ambient occlusion, or for short, AO. So when I say, oh, you need an AO on that, this is what I'm talking about. And you can see there's more examples of what that does. Really makes things pop, adds a little bit more bite to your renders and your shadows. So we're going to fake this. We're going to make this in Maya, but to put it together, we're going to use Photoshop to do it. So let's open up my scene, and these are some of the examples. Where is it? Oh, nope, wrong one. The cube is back. There you are. So let's pick a composition, like something like this, and I'll show you how to set it up. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to the Render tab right over here. Oh, looks like I got one already set up, so I'm going to delete that. There you go. So I'm going to go to the Render tab, and I'm going to make a new render layer. Now, I'm not going to get too much into render layers because that's something I get into far more in my texturing and lighting class, 420. So that's not something you need to worry about. You just need to know how to use this in particular. What I'm going to do is I'm going to only select all the geometry. This is not affected by lights. It's a shader that does this. So only the geo. So since my scene is so nicely organized and in groups, look how easy that was for me. I just went boom, boom in my outliner. I selected everything. That was a piece of geometry. Makes it that it's easier if you want to start doing other things with your scene by organizing. Now I hit this little tab right down here. So this is your make a new layer from selected objects. Awesome. I click on the name, double click, name that AO. That easy. Once that's established, what you're going to do is you're going to right click on it, and you're going to go to the very bottom of the list, attributes. and it's going to pop up something in the attribute window, and you're just going to keep going until you see AO1. Well, that's what it renamed my layer, because apparently I have another AO in here somewhere. And then I'm going to go to presets, right over here, and I'm going to do occlusion. And then what that's going to do, it's going to put a surface shader. So this is a surface shader. Remember surface shaders? I was showing you how to do glows with surface shaders. So this is a different way. This time, instead of using the glow, it's going to put in an ambient occlusion shader into the out color. I'm going to follow the rabbit hole here. I'm going to click on this, go down. It puts in an MIB, which is Mental Images Binary, ambient occlusion node. Apparently I have another one in the scene because that's why I put a 2. So here is samples. The higher this number, the better quality this is going to become. Kind of like unified sampling. When you do your final renders to get a little bit much cleaner image, you crank this value up. So I'll leave it at 16 and you'll see how grainy it is. White is going to be the white area, the area that receives the most light. The nooks and crannies, black. And then spread basically means how far it's going to look for it to calculate the ambient occlusion. Usually, for what you guys are doing, spread at 0.8 is a good jumping off point. I usually don't typically change it that much. The one that I change the most is max distance. So again, this is based off your Maya units. So if I put in a max distance of 1, it's only going to go 1 Maya unit to calculate the ambient occlusion. But do you remember, we're working in centimeters here. It's small, really small. So this number is going to probably crank up. By default, by leaving it to 0, it means infinite. But as soon as you drop a number, you're constraining it to that number on the grid units. So right now, let's just see what this is, and we'll do some test renders. Let's make sure my resolution is at a relatively moderate resolution. So, let's go a little bit smaller so I get a little bit. Let's go 50% of that for now, just for testing purposes, and render it. All right, so nothing's popping up. Let's try some settings here. Yes, it does. Oh, there it is. It's popping up. So let's change some settings here to see what we get. I'm going to try this max distance because apparently max distance is it's not enough. So let's do, well, let's see. A normal human being is what, 180 centimeters? Let's do 180. Let's just do that. See where we get at. Yeah. So it's based off the height of a 6-foot person is where I'm starting from as a reference. That's not bad, actually. Again, look how grainy. Two reasons why it's grainy. It's because I have a really low resolution. And the other is my samples is turned down really low. So I can come in here. I'll save this for comparison. And I'll crank this up to 120. Again, powers of 2. 128, 256, 512, 1024, 2048. You know, those texture resolutions I was talking about before? Same thing as what I recommend here too. You can put in any number, but that's usually a calculation I like to work from. Let's put in 1024. It's going to take longer to calculate, but it's going to come out smoother. I think right now, also on top of it, it is looking smoother, but again, it's also my low resolution on top of that. See, it's coming in. It's coming in. slowly but surely coming in. Coming in there. There it is. It's coming in. It's coming in. I'm telling you, this takes a little while. So if you haven't done this, you might want to set this up pretty soon. Yes, it helps. It makes your shadows appear more, because normal lighting, all your shadows don't really pop up. I mean, you can make it work. It just takes more tweaking and more lights, and then doing a lot of light linking. This fakes that a little bit more for you. So, like right in here, there's a lot. It's really dark between here and here. So I'm looking. See the difference? That's a sampling of 100 and what? No, 16. I did 16 on this one. This is 1024. You can see that noise starts to. Now, again, we're getting all this. This is just my resolution right now. My resolution's really small. But I went from 5 seconds to 1 minute and 24. Yeah. Yeah. So I might think about maybe like 512, maybe find something in between that. I don't know. You're going to have to ballpark that. But once you've made your ambient occlusion, well, all that's done, I might crank up my value a little bit more, where I go to, maybe I go to 200. You got to play with it to see what you get. Until you get maybe something like this. So now what you do is you take your final render. So here's another render that I have in my scene. I take that. So I open up trusty old Photoshop. No, it always comes back to haunt you. And let's find my images directory. I'll just drag that on. Oh. And, yeah. Where is that? Always hate this thing. Always does the aspect ratio. So I'll just go to View, Aspect Ratio, and set it to square. There you go. And then I'll grab my, hey, which one was better? Yeah, let's do this one. My AO. So again, this is all rendered from Maya. Again, I have the problem with the aspect ratio. That's not a big deal. I'll just, yeah, I'll fudge it. There we go. Hit enter. Once I've done that, you just go to a blend mode, multiply. See the difference? See how it adds that extra bite of shading to everything? It's like adding sprinkles to a donut. Right? Look at that. Makes that floor contact right here. Makes this contact right here. I mean, it's just candy, people. Look at that. Once you've done that, can't speak. Save it out from Photoshop. And that's it. Now, this is where the lesson becomes, don't take what Maya gives you at face value. Whatever that renderer gives you, you can still manipulate it. I mean, I can go in here and bring up curves and still lighten up my image, darken my image. Ooh, now I'm getting more of a sunset. And I'm just throwing up curves. Right? Look at that. More later in the day. Bring that up, down. Maybe bring this up. Ooh, look at that. Right? I'm just playing with the contrast. Real simple. So don't take what Maya gives you. Still drop it in the Photoshop. Do your manipulation. All those tools that you learned in whoever has taken digital photography, that whole arsenal of tools is available to you. So there you go. Take that, save that, boom. Again, if you want to go back to Maya, wrong Maya. There we go. If you want to go back to rendering your normal view, don't forget, you have to go back to the channel box layer editor. And right now, I'm selected on the render layer. I'm selected on AO. So if you want to render your lit view, the view that you actually are rendering with lights, click on Master Layer. So now you got two. This is your AO, when you want to render it that way. This one is your Master, with all your lights. The AO has no lights in it. Remember, I only selected the Geo, and it's a shader trick. And then you can put it together in Photoshop